This is a cabled square called Gwyneth's cable, and it's got this really interesting zigzag cable pattern that is highlighted with these post stitches. And one good thing about this square is that it's almost the same on the back, so you don't really have a right side, wrong side, which is always nice for Afghan, so they look nice from both sides. And so on this square, we're going to learn how to make post stitches, which are these, and we're going to learn how to make cables. So let's get started, and I'm working on the second row of the pattern. And after this first setup row, which is all double crochets, every row of this repeat is almost the same. So it might seem a little tricky for the first row, but after you understand that row, you're going to be good to go with this square. And so on this next row, I've had to work a few double crochets, which is explained in the pattern. And next I work a front post treble crochet. Now a treble crochet is yarn over twice. And to work a post stitch, instead of inserting the hook into the top of the stitch the way you normally do, you insert it around the post of the stitch of the row below. So you insert your hook around that post, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then complete the stitch as you normally would, just yarning over and pulling through 2 loops, and we do that 3 times. And the next step is a double crochet in the next stitch. Now, one thing to remember about post stitches is that you've technically already worked this stitch, so you have to skip it behind when you work the next stitch. So the next stitch goes into these loops, and this one remains unworked. It was technically worked, it was just worked around the post instead of into the top of the stitch. So here we work a regular double crochet, and now we start the cable. The cable is worked, since these are long stitches, these are double trebles. Double treble is yarn over 3 times. Then we skip the next 3 stitches and we insert into the 4th stitch. So we're reaching all the way over to the 4th stitch and completing the double treble, which takes a minute because there's so many loops to work through, and we need to work 3 of those. So that was number 2. Here's the third, or the second rather. And then one more, so we yarn over 3 times, insert and pull up a loop, and then just yarn over and pull through 2 loops at a time until you're completed. And now we need to, in order to make the cable twist, we need to go back and work this cross. So it's another double treble, we yarn over 3 times, and then you reach behind the stitches you've already worked, back to this first open stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then just complete the stitch. Now it feels a little awkward because you're sort of twisting and reaching, but this is what makes the crossed effect of the cables. So once you get the hang of it, it doesn't seem so odd, and you'll see after you work a couple rows that you're getting a beautiful crisscross cable. So I just need to work one more here. Yarn over 3 times. And this will complete my first cable. Now we need to go back to the next stitch, which is all the way back here, because these were the post stitches, or not the post stitches, the double trebles that we worked for the first part of our cable. So this is the next stitch we're going to work, and we're just working a double crochet, and that sort of anchors the work back down to the level it needs to be at. And then we're going to work another post stitch in the next stitch, and that's what creates this line going up through the middle. Then one more double crochet, and then we start the next cable. Now the next cable is worked just like, now remember to skip that stitch behind in order to work the next double crochet. The next cable is worked exactly like the one we just learned, except it crosses in the other direction. And so in order to get that cross going in the other direction, you have to, after you work those first 3 double trebles, you're going to go in front of those to work the next 3. So that's what makes the cable wrap in a different direction. And then otherwise you just continue working the rest of the row according to what we've already learned. And once you get the hang of it, this pattern is actually quite easy, and it goes very fast because he's got these big, bulky, tall stitches. And so in no time, your beautiful square will be done. It looks very fancy and impressive. So I hope yours turns out great. This is the puff square, and it's made out of all these really interesting puff stitches, which are not a popcorn and not a cluster, but a puff, which is made by a series of yarn overs, as you'll see shortly. And the puffs are offset so that they really are kind of, you know, stacked really close together, and you get this great texture. It's very, very thick and nice, really cozy, and on the back it's just this really nice kind of even looking pattern. So I'll show you how to work this stitch. It starts with a row of single crochet for a foundation, and then on the next row you work the puffs, and I've here got one row that's already worked, just to show you what one complete row looks like, and then the next row is again all single crochet. So I'm going to show you how to work the puff stitches. And one interesting thing about this pattern is that the puffs are actually worked on the back as you go. So facing you when you're working the puffs, it looks like it's the back side of the square, but you'll see all the action happening on the other side. So it's time to do a puff. And the way that the puff stitch is made is yarn over, insert the hook into the next stitch and pull up a loop. Then you yarn over again, insert into the same stitch, pull up another loop. You do that 5 times. So yarning over, inserting and pulling up a loop, that's 3, 4. For the last one, yarn over, insert back into the same stitch, pull up a loop. So you've now got a zillion loops on the hook. I think there's actually 11 of them. And to complete the stitch, you yarn over, pull through all of the loops at once. Now, I'm not going to lie, it's a little tricky to wiggle through all of those loops. Sometimes you'll catch on a strand of the yarn, but just take your time and be patient. If you need to pull it out and work the stitch again, not the end of the world. So after the puff stitch is completed, you work 2 single crochets. And when you work that next single crochet, it really helps to kind of anchor the puff stitch and help it really poof out the way you want it to. So then when you turn and look on the other side of the work, you can see that you've got your little puff there. And when you work the next row of all single crochet, that also helps the puff to really be completely defined the way you want it to. So I'll show you one more puff. Yarn over, insert into the next stitch, pull up a loop. Yarn over and insert again, pull up another loop. That's 2, 3, 4, 5. It starts to feel a little awkward to work into the same stitch so many times, but this is just one with a little practice, isn't so bad. And then to complete the stitch, yarn over and pull through all the loops at once. I'll see I'm getting a little stuck, which is a real common problem with this stitch, and you just have to sort of wiggle it. If you feel that it's getting caught on the strands, just kind of take a break and keep working at it. Sometimes once you get the loop most of the way through, you can see where it was stuck and you can just sort of finesse it. And we're going to then work a single crochet into the next stitch. That one's giving me a little bit of trouble there. And a single crochet into the next stitch. And again, you can see the puffs really taking place on the other side of the work. And when we work the next row, which is just going to be a single crochet all the way across, they'll really puff out even more. And so that's really all there is to it. You just have to be a little patient with those tricky puffs, and once you get them, you'll be well rewarded with a nice textural square. So I hope that you have a lot of fun with this one, and again, check our website for this pattern. And this is a filet crochet square, which is a really interesting technique to practice for a sampler afghan. If you've ever wanted to learn filet crochet, this is a great little quickie experiment with filet. And here's the square we'll be making. And so this filet is center, and what filet crochet refers to is this type of design that's sort of like a grid with empty squares and filled in squares. And after you complete the center filet, the outside is just basic double crochet border around the filet. So let me show you how to work the filet portion. And here I've gotten one row done, and this row just happens to be a series of empty squares, as I refer to them. I think of filet as empty squares versus filled in squares. And now it's time to start the next row. And to do that, we start with a chain 5 and turn the work. And first, according to my chart, you work an empty square, and so to do that, we just double crochet into the next double crochet below. And you can see that's created an empty space. And next we need another empty space, and so an empty space is created by a chain 2 and then a double crochet. Next I need a filled in space, and to make a filled in space we work 2 double crochets into the space below. So that's 1, 2, and then another double crochet into the next double crochet. After this, my chart calls for an empty space, so that's a chain 2 and a double crochet, and then a filled in space, which again is 2 double crochets. So every time the chart calls for an empty space, it's just a chain 2, and every time the chart calls for a filled in space, we double crochet twice into the space or stitches below. So I'm making another filled in space here. And we'll just finish this one with a double crochet in the stitch below. And you can see now that we've made a series of empty blocks and filled in blocks. And continuing to build the blocks in this way creates the overall pattern that we're going for. And I'll show you another row, which is a more solid row. And to build this one, we start with a chain 5, which is the equivalent of 1 double crochet plus a chain 2 space, and then we double crochet into the space below. And now this row requires a big filled in area, as you can see, so that's just nothing more than a bunch of double crochets. It's 2 double crochets into the space below. And now we're going to be working into on top of a square that's already filled in. So in this case, since we can't work into the space below, we'll just work right into those double crochets. And that's how we build a solid block on top of a solid block. And it's really just as easy as that, either double crochets or chain 2 spaces until you've completed the entire filet crochet center, which is what we have here. And once the center is done, start working the border. The border is very easy here. It's just double crochets or single crochets. And on the side that I'm working on, which is the first border round, we're simply working double crochets around the edges. And this pattern happens to call for 2 double crochets in every chain space and 1 double crochet on the side of the double crochets. And of course, the specifics of this are all in the pattern, which can be downloaded from our website. Every week we upload the pattern for that week's square of the week so that you can work on your sampler afghan week by week. So there you can see the border round coming together, and that's all it takes. If you can double crochet and chain, you can do filet crochet and you can do this square. So I hope you give this one a try, and I hope it turns out great. This is the square we'll be learning. It's a diamond pattern, and it's made up of these shells of treble crochets, which are sort of stacked on top of each other to create a diamond effect. And then we get the color changes in there, which really make a neat graphic pattern. So I'll show you how to work on it. And here I'm working on the first row, which is worked directly into the foundation chain. And to start the next shell, I'm going to skip 2 chains on the chain and then work into this 3rd chain. To make a treble crochet, you yarn over twice, insert into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through 2 loops, yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and yarn over and pull through the last 2 loops. Then to make the next stitch, we yarn over twice again, insert into the very same space, then complete the stitch. And to make the shell, you just make 7 treble crochets, and each one is worked into the very same space. So you can, sounds like a lot of stitches, but it's really not hard to fit them all in. So you'll just keep making 7 until your shell is complete. And so now we'll move on to the next row. And here we're working with the next color, which is white. And on this row, we're working inverted shells. So in order to do that, we need all of the stitches to connect at the top, but they're worked into the stitches below them. So to do that, we start with a chain 2. And we need to work 7 treble crochet together. So to start that, we yarn over twice, insert into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2 loops, yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and then stop that stitch. Leave those last 2 loops on the hook, and that's how we work the stitches together. So we move to the next one, yarn over twice, insert into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through 2 and through 2, but leave the last loop on the hook. We're going to keep repeating this for 7 stitches, and that's going to accumulate a lot of hooks, a lot of loops on the hook, and at the end we'll join all of those together. I've just got one split yarn there that I have to get over my hook. There we go. Sometimes the yarns split and you just have to sort of grab them and pull them where they need to be. Okay, let's see. I've done 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the 5th one, the 6th one, and now the 7th one. And as you can see, we've got a lot of loops piled up on my hook. And to complete this stitch and join all of these together to get that nice cluster shape that we want, yarn over, pull through all the loops on the hook. And there you can see that it creates this inverted shell that's connected at the top. And next we chain 2 and make a single crochet in the next stitch, and that anchors the shell. And that's really all there is to this stitch pattern. On the next row, we would work another row of shells that are inverted again like they were in the first row, and then you just keep working every row alternating the orientation of the shells, and before long you build this great graphic diamond pattern. So you can find this pattern on our website, and I hope it works out great for you. And this is the shell and bar square. This is a really easy one for beginning crocheters. All you need to know for this square is how to do a double crochet. And with just a double crochet, we get all of this really interesting patterning with the shells and the sort of vertical bar strip. So I'm going to show you how to do this. And I'll show you how to work one row, and this square is made up of just a 1-row repeat. So if you understand how to do one of the rows, you understand how to do all of the rows. And the row begins with a chain 3, and then turn the work. And now that chain 3 counts as the first stitch of the row. So we skip this first stitch and we work into the second stitch. And we're going to work 4 double crochets into the next 4 stitches. So that was 1, and of course double crochet is yarn over, insert into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and then yarn over and pull through the next 2 loops. So we need 2 more double crochets, and then it's time to start our first shell. Now these shells are just made up of double crochets and a chain, so very easy. We just yarn over and we're going to work into the top of the next shell, which is this one. Oops, actually it looks like I made a mistake and I worked a double crochet into the top of the shell, which I don't need, so I'll just take that out. And now I'm working into the space of the shell from the row below. So I'm working 2 double crochets, and when you work into a space, you actually insert the yarn into that hole in the stitches. So 2 double crochets, chain 1, and 2 more double crochets all into the same space, and that's what makes that fan shape that we're looking for, or a shell shape as it's called for this pattern. So there you can see that we've got the shell, and next we're going to work another shell, and that one goes into the top of the other shell from the row below. So yarn over, insert into the space, complete the double crochet, then 1 more double crochet, chain 1, 2 more double crochets to work that shell, and then we'll see that again we've got another shell fanning out from the shell below, and now it's time to work some more double crochets into the bars below. So we go to the next double crochet and work a regular double crochet. Now we're working into each stitch because we're in this vertical double crochet section of the pattern. And we're just going to work along until it's time to do the next shell. And of course this is indicated in the pattern, and all of these patterns can be found on our website. Every week you can download the square for that week's Afghan of the Week sampler. And now we're at a shell, so it's time for another shell. Double crochet into the space of the shell below. Okay, double crochet again. chain 1, and that chain 1 is what creates the space that we're working into.